So yes, it is after 12 and the episode is just going up. And so y'all, I tried to go live today. I was going to do this episode live. And then I found out that that was not as plug and play as I thought it would be. And so I had to not go live. But I learned that at like 11:57. Here we are. Passion public service announcement. Passionate. Let me tell you something. So what is this Passion PSA podcast? Who am I? Well, they call me Passion, short for passion, no last necessary. Why is there no last name necessary? Because the first name says it all. I am Passion and all that embodies. What do I do here? I give you the life coaching that you know you need, but don't enroll yourself in. When did I start? Actually, 2017. I'd leave a PSA on my Instagram regarding something I'd observed, and now we've evolved to this. Why do I do it? Why not? If even one person is able to take away one thing that changes their life, someone else's life, or changes the world for the better, then I've done what I was charged to do. So come on in, sit and listen for a while. There's something here for everyone at the Passion PSA Podcast. Greetings and salutations, my beloved passionate newcomers, visitors, and guests. Welcome to another episode of the Passion PSA Podcast, where I, Passion No Last Necessary, your Get You Right guru, issue a weekly public service announcement about whatever I've observed or was on my mind. This is a for your consideration zone where the objective is to offer you a perspective you may not have previously considered, to both expand your thinking and to aid you in becoming a better version of yourself, and for others. This is a safe space, but not necessarily a delicate one. I'll never rob you of your right to feel what you feel. Pay attention to what I'm saying. The same way I won't sugarcoat the truth to make it more palatable. The goal is to get you to higher, more expanded thinking so you can operate as your highest and best self. Each week, prior to getting into the topic, we take about 60 seconds to make affirmations, to intentionally raise the vibration so that we can ensure that regardless of what we may discuss, how it may make you feel, that we have intentionally started on the highest possible vibration and correct frequency. The fact is, if I'm going to talk about real life and real life issues, at some point, you'll probably feel attacked. But striking chords is how we create beautiful sounds. So if you're ready, go ahead and take a deep breath. You are always welcome. You are always welcome to repeat after me or to use this time to state your own affirmations. My story is my own. I have a right to tell my story. I am grateful for the healing telling my story provides. I use the lessons I've learned to help others, to teach others, and to reach others. I am loosed from the shackles of shame. I am allowed to be me. I am free to be me. I am unapologetically living in my truth and seeking to live in the absolute truth. I honor that process. I give the process the time that it requires. Seed time and harvest. My harvest is abundant. Gratitude for the abundance. Ashe, ashe, ashe. So passionate, I was talking to an old friend recently and they were asking me about how I come up with topics for the podcast. So I had to laugh to myself because it made me think of another conversation that I had had with someone else about the show intro. While you have some people who intentionally skip the intro to get right to the discussion, and there's nothing wrong with that, there are others, I am others, who listen to the information provided and appreciate the details. So while the show intro clearly states how I come up with subjects, people still ask me where I get the topics. Anyway, as we were discussing it, the question was posed, do I ever worry that someone will be upset that I'm talking about something that involved them? And they also said, like, even if you said nothing that could be traced back to them, do you ever worry that they might feel away? Now, I know that people move and flex however they choose from day to day, and that they may be A-okay with whatever on Sunday and then ready to fight you over that same something on Monday. depending on the story and my relationship with the person. If I'm telling a story and think the person that it's about is in the audience, I'll tell them I did an episode about X. I comb through my episodes. This is another reason why I script. So I can go over it and ensure that I didn't even use a gender pronoun so that you can't safely assume whether or not it's a male or a female. So if I told a story about a conversation or an event and you know definitively I'm talking about you and you got mad, you have a right to that as stated in the intro. But if you know anything about me, you know that my acquaintance base, I don't know why I'm struggling with that. My acquaintance base is far reaching. So unless you can prove with certainty I'm talking about you, it's speculation. Now, if you're worried that someone else may think I'm talking about you, it's your choice to confirm or deny. What I have learned is that there are many, many, many instances where the occurrence is the same almost to the letter. And while you could be swearing someone is talking about you, that's your ego making you the main character in a story where you may or may not even have been a consideration, much less a major player. Now, if I think in some way you could be exposed, and that's not the type of energy I'm coming with, I'll tell you in advance that I plan or intend to do an episode, tell you what I'm going to discuss, and then get your feedback. I actually did that with one friend, and they advised me that it could cause problems for them. Well, I'm not mixy, and I value our relationship. Did it pain me to stop working on that episode? 100 million%, because the content was solid. It was very useful and could serve you all very well. And I was halfway through it, and I had been working on it for hours. Sidebar. They knew I was going to do an episode, and they knew that I was going to include some content from our conversations, but there were other factors that would have caused an issue. But that upset, for me, it birthed a whole other episode, and I was able to protect my friend and my brand. Ding dong somebody, okay? It's one thing when the stakes are just personal relationships, and that's a big enough thing. But it's next level when the stakes involve possible lawsuits. Fortunately for me, none of that was actually the case. Okay, so we have the conversation, and I think to myself, you know what? This would be a great topic. But I'm outside, right? And I'm living, and I got other episodes locked and loaded, plus episodes that I'm already working on. So this episode is not at the forefront of my mind. But then it comes back to me. But this time, it's not about me at all. So now I'm thinking about other conversations I've had with different people about writing a book on their life or telling their truths. And beloveds, these people had all decided that their story was useful, it was vital, it was important to share, and they decided their stories would be told after certain people were dead. So this person over here doesn't want to tell their story until this person dies, so that this person doesn't have to feel embarrassment or shame. This person right here doesn't want to tell their story until someone else dies, so they don't have to deal with the wrath of that person accusing them of lying and altering the story to make themselves look better. Passionate, I had to sit with that for a while. You hear me? I know someone who read someone's story and they were completely devastated by what they read. They felt like that person had viciously lied on them, slandered them to no end, and painted them as a hideous monster. They were crushed and they were heartbroken. They couldn't believe that someone would say such hateful things about them. And many of us have even experienced that in a verbal disagreement. Someone says something to us that completely blindsides us, and we just can't even believe not only that they've said this, but that this is what they've been thinking, this is what they've been feeling, or this is what they've been saying to others, right? So now our sense of security becomes falsified because all of these questions arise. How long have you been feeling this way? Why didn't you ever say anything? And who else did you tell before you told me? And that area can get even more sticky if you've ever met some of their cronies or their counterparts, and those people acted a little odd, or maybe they looked a little strange when they were looking at you, because if you asked the mutual party about their friend's behavior and they dismissed it, oh, it's nothing. And then you get to connecting dots. Let me put it to y'all this way. If you are the mutual party, I can just promise you this. Just about any and everything that you've ever said will be questioned, and nothing you'll ever say going forward will be taken at face value. Once you're deemed questionable, Everything you say will be questioned. So you're the person about whom the story was told, who may or may not be okay with their story being told at all, especially if they don't like how they're portrayed. And you have the storyteller who is authoring the story and presenting it from their perspective. So whose rights matter more? Well, from my position, everybody has a right to their story, just like everyone has a right to their privacy. So everyone's rights matter equally. At the same time, we have to keep in mind that our role in someone's story isn't rooted in or based on how good we look in that story. Like it or not, we're all a part of someone else's story. Every supporter of this podcast is part of my story, whether I know who they are or not. The same applies for every follower on social media. So if I write a book, it's possible any of you could be included because you're part of the story of the podcast experience. Like, you get that? All right. So knowing that we're all part of someone else's story, if they want or need to tell their story, our names might be called or our likeness might appear. At the point where you don't want your name called in someone else's story, you need to ask yourself if that's because you fear how you'll be judged by the consumers of said story. You don't get to change anything you did in the past. We know that, right? You do get to outgrow and evolve from previous versions of self, but you don't get to pretend that was never you. Even if you feel like they've taken everything out of context, they still get to tell it how they want to tell it, according to their experience. What did Omena say in the last episode? Your truth will manifest for you, your experiences, but it will not be the total truth, because the truth is universal. The truth is infinite. Our perspective creates our reality, right? So, for example, while you may see yourself responding a certain way because you're tired and frustrated, people on the receiving end of your exhaustion and frustration may experience you as a cold, mean, screaming, yelling banshee, right? The total truth is that there was a reaction to a situation. Irrefutable. Your truth may be that your reaction was justified. The receiver's truth may be that it was totally uncalled for, no matter how you were feeling. The only thing universal is that there was a reaction. While you think they're over-exaggerating and sensationalizing it, that's what and how they felt. We've talked about it time and again, that you don't get to decide how minor or major an occurrence was for someone else. If to them, it was a major turning point in their life, whether it was the moment they decided to become a therapist or the moment they decided to become a serial killer, you could sit there and say it wasn't that serious all you want. You're not saying it because that's universally irrefutable, even if the majority of the world's population agrees with you. More likely to be, but less likely to be admitted to, you're saying it wasn't that serious because you wouldn't have reacted that way. Because when it happened to you, you didn't react that way. And that's a layered conversation in and unto itself, because a lot of people talk about what they didn't do when something happened to them, but they leave out the part where they didn't do it because they couldn't. We can unpack that box in another episode. But okay, so they wouldn't react that way, they didn't react that way, or they want to pass because they want to be received well, even after they've behaved poorly. That's the large majority of people. Point is, they get to tell their story how they see fit. And guess what, beloved? You get to tell yours too. So if you feel like someone wrote a book about you and painted you as a monster and you want to defend yourself or clear your name, $1.25 Tree has a pack of pens that got 10 pens in it for $1.25. And the actual 99-cent store has packs of pens for 99 cents. And if $1 is too rich for your blood, well, you can always use the phone, the tablet, or the computer that you're streaming this very episode on or from and start writing in any notes app that came with the device, or you can get a free downloadable. And it's your choice if you're going to be mixy and messy and write a tell-all, airing them out because your pride is injured, or if you're going to just write a status on Facebook or write a blog post and tell your side there. That's your story to tell. But no one should fear telling their story. They should be able to tell it, and you should feel free to counter accordingly. Well, Passion, you talk a good game, but I doubt you would be saying that if the story was about you. I'll stand on it, beloved. I'll give you a perfect for instance. I had an employee once they had gotten comfortable in their position, they started taking all kinds of liberties and doing everything that was in total violation of policy. So they were late every day. They clocked in before they were ready to start working, right? So they would go in the back, they would sit down, they would eat, they would talk on the phone, maybe 5, maybe 15 minutes, however much time they felt like spending, that's the time that they would spend in the back before reporting to the floor to actually work. Right? At one point, they were having a conversation with myself and another employee, and they were like, oh, I don't care what the circumstances are. I'm not going to run for a bus, period. They went even further to say that they would take their time and stroll, even if they were late. And that was just too bad. Whoever had to deal with it just had to deal with it. Repeatedly, they didn't show up for scheduled shifts. They didn't call. They made up stories about why they didn't come after they had been tracked down, like literally calling all over the world, trying to make sure that this person wasn't like dead or injured somewhere. They made promises to not do it again, okay? And before you surmise it, like, well, maybe they had a substance abuse issue, negative. They were young and reckless, and they felt like they could do whatever without repercussion. I had a meeting with the assistant manager. I asked them, what do you want to do? Because staff is your responsibility. They said, let them go. They've left all of us in a lurch more times than a few. They keep lying in my face. They're violating policy. I've talked to them. You've talked to them. They've been given multiple chances and they keep doing this, so they must not want the job. We sit down in a meeting. I sit on a crate. My assistant handles everything. They ask the questions. They give the feedback. They serve the termination notice. The employee thanks my assistant for being a great boss, for all they were able to learn from them, for giving them a chance, and then they left. And then they went home and they told their parent that I fired them. So parent takes the liberty to call me, thinking that they're going to scold and embarrass me for unjustly terminating their child. So I did exactly what we've been talking about here. I gave my side. Beloved, I'm under no obligation to explain this to you, but since we have a rapport, I'm going to clear some things up. Okay? I said, parent, do you know the company's policies? Has your child told you all of the policies that they violated? Have they told you about how rude and disrespectful they are? Have they told you about all of the no calls and no shows? I didn't go into all the specifics, but I did ask them if their child had told them all of the things I told y'all about, and parent was floored. Then I told them I wasn't the one that handled the firing or made the ultimate decision to terminate. I was in the room because I had to be. Well, while they told you this was what I did, all I did was sit there. Sorry, y'all, I had to sneeze. Anyway, there was a humble apology after that. Parent was responding to the story that had been told. Not the truth, but the perspective. So when the whole story was told, parent had to withdraw the accusations and condemnations. There are a couple things that you should take from that. If the story is told while you're still alive, you can defend yourself in real time. If the story is told and you're gone, it's anybody's guess who, if anybody, will defend you and what they will say and who will listen. And there's another key element to that, which is that they're going to be responding or rebutting from their perspective. Now, they may staunchly defend the storyteller. They may staunchly defend the character in question. Or they may say both of y'all were completely wrong and this is what really happened. So in my case, it was immediate and I was able to address it right away. Going back to my friend's original question, do I worry if they feel away? If that former employee or their parent is watching this, the only people who know exactly who I'm talking about are the nameless characters in the story. So they could get on their preferred platform and say, oh, Passion is lying about me. Or Passion is lying about our family. But that would expose them. And that's something I intentionally didn't do. So at that point, they'll look like they're clout chasing. And if they're watching and they feel a way that it was brought up, they missed the point. Because this story wasn't actually about them. If you were paying attention at the beginning of the story, this was about someone telling a story about me and how when they needed to paint themselves as the victim, they made me the bad guy by leaving out all the details of their behavior, which ultimately led to their termination. So then if the rebuttal is, well, why didn't you use another example, or why didn't you talk about someone else? Then we're right back where we started, with the issue not actually being the story, but the players in the story not wanting to see themselves portrayed a certain way, even if that's how the writer or the storyteller experienced them. You cannot change how someone has experienced you any more than they can change how you feel about how they are telling or have told the story. You can change your behavior going forward. You can talk to them about what happened and see if you can iron out your differences. You can see if it's possible to reach a common ground in the future. You can write your own account of what took place. You can tell your story and drag them for filth, or model how to write a story without painting someone negatively. And you might even find that's a little bit more challenging than you would have thought, because sometimes even when you intend no malice, your actions or statements will be construed as malicious and malevolent. People receive and process different things differently. There are many approaches you can take to respond to someone sharing an unfavorable or unsavory account of an experience or a life with you, but they have a right to share it. And I'm sure there's someone who feels like, it's my business and you don't have the right to tell my business. And that's a slippery slope. Because once you share something with someone, it's y'all's business. So they do have a right to talk to someone else about it, even if it makes you feel completely exposed, unless you had them sign an NDA. And just pause for a moment with that, because I realize that once you've entrusted someone with something and you've explicitly said to them, please don't share this with anyone, you are trusting, hoping, praying, believing that they will honor that request. Some will, some won't. That reality can never be circumvented. But in terms of legality, unless you had them sign an NDA, if they decide they're going to go run their mouth like a New York City marathon, that was the risk you took when you chose to share the experience. That is also the risk you took when you chose to go live your life publicly. Whatever you do within the scope of someone else becomes part of their story. You going into a space that you feel is quiet or private or safe, and there are only these people there and all of these people participate in these things, so it shouldn't be an issue. Well, theoretically, it's not an issue to participate in it, but you participated in it. And if I went to that same place, I have a right to tell the story of that one time when I went to that one place and I saw that one thing. Now, if I didn't call your name, I didn't call your name. You recognizing me from being in that place and you knowing that I'm talking about you does not mean that I exposed you. It means that I shared a story. I recounted an event that I experienced in my life, and I have a right to that. And you can feel how you feel. That's what we say at the beginning of the episodes, right? You can feel how you feel. You have that right. And I have the right to deliver it as I'm going to deliver it. And we just going to have to find the common ground in between that. I just needed to jump in and say that real quick. I'm going to get back to what I was talking about. So I left off at saying you might feel completely exposed, but they have a right to say whatever unless there's an NDA in place, because then there would be a legal ramification. Now, is it whack if they're just sitting there gossiping about you? Yeah. But if they're trying to process how they feel about something and they're talking to their confidant, they have a right to that as well. Well, if they were having trouble with something I told them, they should have talked to me about it. No. We know that even when we need to talk about something, we don't always have the right words to say. Talking about it with someone unbiased, or even talking about it with someone who is biased, that can help us sort through our thoughts and our emotions and possibly temper ourselves. So if we do speak on it again and tempers flare, which they probably will, at least one of us can try to de-escalate the situation. Okay, well, what's the process? I shared something with them about me. Only a narcissist would make it about them. Or someone triggered. If you tell someone something and it brings up some unhealed or unsettling thing in them, they're probably going to need or want to talk about it with someone. You don't get to decide who that someone is. Also, who's coming to talk to you about how what you told them triggered them when your untrained, uncertified, undegreed self has already diagnosed them as a narcissist for having feelings? Additionally, they could be stunned by what you shared. So this new information may have created a new reality for them, and that kind of shock requires processing time and sometimes processing personnel. And it doesn't matter if you agree with any of that. We don't have to agree with someone else's rights for them to be entitled to them. Last on that list, sometimes people make the decision to tell or share the story because they feel like the next person has a right to know because it impacts the next person directly or indirectly. Your argument may be you would have told them in your time, but their argument may be that person needed to know now. For whatever you choose to share anywhere or with anyone, know that at any point, someone can and may tell the story and you get no say-so in that. I know this is hard to process. I know that you may feel like a text, a blog, a social media post, and a book, they're all different. But when it gets down to brass tacks, they're really not. Your story is your story, and you have a right to tell it via whatever medium you see fit. There are going to be some casualties. Like I just was saying to you, someone who doesn't even know your story may end up being a major player in your story. And regardless of whether they showed up in or are portrayed in a negative or positive way, they'll be included and have to navigate that. Someone who has perched themselves on the highest pedestal may end up devastated by your reality because they never knew or believed you felt that way. Someone you thought so highly of might denounce or disown you after you write your book because they can't believe you would write these things. All of the parties who are hurt or angered by your story have the same right to their feelings as you have to author and share your experience. They also have the right to counter your claims or sue you if it comes to that. So when you pen your story, do as much as possible to cover yourself. You may want to expose them 100%, but if you can't cover the legal fees for that, whether it be to pay for an unbeatable legal team or to pay settlements, if you can't cover the cost of the expose, then think it through. But no one should have to wait until someone dies in order to tell their truth. Ask yourself what kind of relationship you have with someone if the only way you can be honest about how you feel is to wait until they're dead. And if you're the person feeling like they should wait until you're dead, either out of courtesy or respect, ask yourself how you would feel if someone asked you to live in the shadows so they could escape trial and persecution in the court of public opinion. Ask yourself what your position is on respect. Ask yourself if you think respect is supposed to be mutual or if you feel like you should be respected and everyone should take whatever you throw their way. While you can clearly see the downside to the story being told, take some time and think about the downsides of the story not being told. The healing that doesn't take place. The sexual predator who continues to prey on the unsuspecting. The boundaries that continue to be overstepped. There are pros and cons to all of it. As for me, I'm going to continue to tell the stories. Whatever I've observed or was on my mind, that's what I say every week. That's what I mean every week. Some people can't grasp concepts without examples. They need something to liken it to make sense of what they're hearing. If it offends you to hear our story here, okay. Will I then not tell the story because of your pride or offense? Probably not. If I didn't call your name or identify you, you're feeling away because you want to feel away. I use examples to teach. If you never knew I felt X way about Y, you probably weren't listening when I said it to you. If this is the first you're hearing of it, you can call me, text me, DM me, send me a listener letter to mybrilliantfriendpassion@gmail.com. Because if the door to communication was shut before, at this point it's wide open, right? Y'all let me know what you think. Questions, comments, concerns, commendations, criticisms, or compliments, they can all be left below. Whether you're viewing or listening on your preferred podcast platform, like, subscribe, turn on notifications, share. Help me, help others, help themselves. If you would like to be a financial contributor, donations can be made via Podbean, PayPal, Cash App, Linktree, or Zelle. All the links are in the description box and a few discount codes. Every little bit helps. It all goes back into the pod. Your Get You Right Guru is signing off, y'all. Go for it. Be great. Be filled with bliss. Be armed and empowered with knowledge. Tell a story because it's yours to tell. Just make sure you tell it right. And in all things, be passionate. See you later.